Right. Allegedly, I'm live and on a few platforms if I've managed to get it right. Today, I'm joined by David Kurten of the Heritage Party. And David's going to tell us all about what the party stands for, what he stands for, and just the way, where the guy's geared up and what he thinks about. So, because at the moment, David seems to me like the only decent politician out there moving through. Yeah, it's fine. He's going through. He was part of UKIP. And we just talked backstage about that, and that was just my beliefs, and he reaffirmed what I was thinking. But we're going to go through. Well, Dave, if you just start us off, before you got into politics, you were a teacher, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, people ask me about my background. I don't know how far back to go, but yeah, I was a teacher for about 20 years before I got into politics actively so it's about 2012, 2013. So I was just kind of minding my own business, teaching chemistry, enjoying life. And I found you can use your job to travel around the world as a chemistry teacher. So I was kind of enjoying that as well.
I did see you've been on tour. I was like, that's impressive.
It was great, yeah. So I was here a little bit in the UK, but also I taught in Botswana and Bosnia and the USA as well. So that was fantastic. But yeah, I was back in the UK, and I was very concerned about two things. One was the EU, as we all were back in the day, and what it was doing to democracy and freedom, and taking away, powers from this country more and more to the unelected bureaucrats in Brussels, as we know. And I was also concerned about political correctness and where that was going. And that was 10 years ago, and it was bad enough then. It was there was clampdowns on freedom of speech, and we were told, oh, don't say this, say that, you can't use this language, you should use this language. And it was just growing into a monster. And the only party that seemed to be against these things politically was UKIP. Obviously, they existed for one reason primarily, which was to come out of the EU, but also at the time, Farage and other people, back in the day were speaking out against political correctness. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to join and I'm going to see what happens and see if I can go anywhere with this. And, amazingly, I'd only been in the party for a few months, and I got a letter from the chairman at the time saying, is anyone interested in being a candidate? Apply. I thought, oh, okay, great. I'll just go. I'll just go and knock on the door and see if it opens. And I got selected to be a candidate. And my first election was in a really no-hope seat in inner London, but I was standing against Harriet Harman, who brought in the Equality Act. So she's got a terrible reputation. So because I stood against her, everyone thought, wow, this is great. So they got me a little bit of, my name got known around the party because I was standing against her. And, people sort of applauded me for that. And then the next year was the London Assembly elections. And I got second place on the list, and then UKIP got 2 seats in 2016. There was a referendum bounce, obviously, that was like a few weeks before the Brexit referendum. So, people were voting UKIP because they wanted to say, we want to come out of the EU as well. So, I was just there, and I'm so glad I was there and got in, because the next 5 years I could question Sadiq Khan.
Which went well, I thought.
All the questions that no one else was willing to ask.
Yeah. I would have said that you gave it to him with both barrels, and had somebody else done it, he would have pulled the race card on them, because he's quite good at doing so. But speaking of him, he's a bit of a monster, really, in the way that, say, for instance, the expansion of the ULEZ zone and all the rest of it. And I think he's swinging the weight around a little bit too far. And I think that anybody that abuses him, I don't know if you saw it lately, there were people speaking up, and he said they're all far right and they're vaccine and COVID deniers. Well, it just erupted. But I think he's just been, disingenuous, to say the very least.
Oh, I saw that. It was terrible. This is what he does. And this is one of the things, it's called People's Question Time. And there has to be 4 every year. I think they go round different boroughs in London. So, members of the public can come and ask questions of the mayor rather than just the assembly. So, there's obviously millions of people are really unhappy about his plan to expand this ULEZ charging zone to the whole of Greater London, and bring another 4 or 5 million people into this new taxation trap. And for them to be concerned, because real people are going to they're not going to be able to drive to work without paying £12.50 a day, or what is that? That's £62.50 a week
It's
just to
not
go to
cheap.
work if you've got an older car, or you want to do business, you're a tradesman or something with an older van, you're going to be, you're going to go out of business. So people have got very legitimate concerns about this. And then he turns around and says, oh, you're far right, you're COVID deniers, you're vaccine deniers. What on earth has that got to do with it? You don't want to
It's just trying to
charge
shut you down, isn't it? I mean, it's throw some rubbish at you. The expression is throw enough shit, some of it'll stick. And that's just basically what it is. But I want to know actually how much this clean air zone that they're done, how much has it made a difference to the air quality within London? Because some people reckon it hasn't made anywhere near as much of a difference as they thought it would. So, I think
I looked into this when I was on the London Assembly, and they're very clever because they get lots of researchers at King's College London to do all these analyses of like the air levels in various points around London, and then chart them and graph them and so on. But they're very selective in the data points they use. And if you actually ask them, what was your methodology? No one will give you, a straight answer because they make it so complicated.
Because it can be pulled apart.
But essentially, London's air has been getting cleaner for the last 4 decades. It's, nitrogen dioxide levels, for example, have been going down and down and down in general for decades. And so, he's saying, oh, I started this ULEZ zone and there the NO2 levels are going down. But they were going down anyway. And also these other measure they use as PM 2.5s, as small carbon particulates. Well, those levels have been going down as well. And they're under the World Health Organization's safe levels, according to them. But he's still insisting that London has got a huge problem with bad air quality. Look, it does. There are higher nitrogen dioxide levels on the main roads in central London, like the Ring Road around central London and some of the main roads there. But out in the boroughs in outer London, they're well within the WHO standards. So, and they're going down because as we go on, the engine technology is getting better and better. So people are getting rid of older cars, buying newer cars anyway. That's happening. It's an ongoing process. So as people upgrade their cars every year, then the air quality gets better and better anyway. So those levels have gone down a little bit, but they're really nothing much to do with Sadiq Khan. What he's doing is just taxing people. So he's getting money because there's a massive hole in City Hall's finances. I mean, the Greater London Authority, when I left, it was about £12 billion in debt. And that's just the Greater London Authority. That's on top of the national debt. And it was going up by about £1 billion every year because they're just no good at balancing their budgets.
Our national debt went up hugely, didn't it, under COVID?
Yeah.
I don't know how much it went up by, but it was really, really significant.
I think the national debt went up by about 400 billion over the 2 years, 2020 to 2022. That was horrendous. But, London's debt was already big, in the billions, and is going up because, he didn't put tube fares up and bus fares up. He had a price freeze on that for 4 or 5 years. And he spends a lot of money on all these nonsensical things like a hate crime unit and so on. So this is what he's more concerned about. So he's got to try and do this to plug the budget because he's, been financially irresponsible for the time he's been mayor. But he's also committed to these Agenda 2030 policies, where they want to get rid of cars. Essentially, this is all about curtailing freedom, and cars are freedom, vehicles are freedom, but they don't want people to be able to drive around freely as they used to do. They want people to be able, to have to give an account and ask permission to drive. So I think in the world that they want to create is this world of smart technology, this surveillance technology, where you won't be able to drive freely around your own city. So
but who actually gave them the permission to do this? Because at the end of the day, this is our country, all of our country. And there's a few little people that are going to decide to treat us all like essentially cattle. You can do this, you can't do that. This is where you can go. You'll have nothing and be happy isn't a joke. They're deadly serious about this. I mean, what they want to do is eventually they don't want us to own our own property. Well, I know a certain country that's much like that. And then to have a vehicle, they're going to tax you ridiculously. I've even heard about some ridiculous things about brakes and tire tax, because eventually if they do get rid of this fuel if we can't drive vehicles with fuel, they'll have to find a way of plugging the gap for the money that we're making off that. So they'll come up with other ridiculous ideas, but they don't want you to travel any more than 15 minutes. Well, this used to be our country. So if I can't go, that alone is, wrong. And then they want to hit us with all sorts of taxes. So where do you see this going yourself? Because, I mean, if they keep taking people's freedom away, surely at some point the straw that breaks the camel's back has to be, if I can't go anywhere and do anything, I've lost everything effectively. And that's when unrest will happen, I think.
Yeah, well, look, Simon, this is a really, really important point actually to make, is that democracy is being circumvented on a global to local level. So what's happening? You've got these globalist plans. They're very clear. Klaus Schwab has written about it from the World Economic Forum. He wrote a whole book, The Great Reset. It's there for everybody to see. The World Economic Forum puts out graphics, monthly, telling you their plans about they want us to eat bugs and they don't want us to use our cars and they want us to live in 15-minute zones. It's all very out in the open. But what they're doing is they want to implement it on a local level. So they're going to local councils, and also part of the plan is to implement local mayors. So metro mayors and local mayors would have total control over the policy within their area, rather than having a council with councillors that are a little bit more accountable to the people.
Like Hitlers and Himmlers all over the place.
Yeah, they'll be little fiefdoms, like little chiefs of their fiefdoms, exactly. They can, like Sadiq Khan, for example, as mayor of London, since that system was set up, he has total control over the police and crime and transport, and also the fire brigade. I mean, you can't really do much controversial with the fire brigade, although he tries. He's saying, that, he wants to get rid of the word fireman and this and that. So
fire them.
Yeah, he will even try and make that politically correct.
Yeah.
But that's it. He's got complete control over these things. So I was on the London Assembly, but the London Assembly didn't have any real hard power. It could only scrutinize, and it could bring things to the attention of the public, and get things in the media, but it couldn't override him democratically and politically. So there's a big problem. So whereas if you have a local council with lots of councillors, then you do have a chance potentially of having a group of councillors opposing those who are, on the leading party in the council. So London's different, but London was the first, and now we got metro mayors all over the country, and they're trying to get more local mayors in local areas as well. So, and this is part of the globalist plan to implement these schemes. They
set a clean air zone up in Bristol now. And I believe they set one up, is it Birmingham? But they just not paying. Birmingham people are a bit more feisty. They're like, I ain't paying that, mate. You can do what you need. But they're not paying it. And I think there's a problem with that, which I'm glad about, because you've said so in we have to actually disobey them, but in the most, how do we put this?
Peaceful civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience was what I was looking for, because at the end of the day, if we keep going, yes, sir, where will it end? And I mean, it's things like they wanted to, because that's just us getting about, but there's other freedoms that we're going to lose. Do you remember when they said that if you weren't vaccinated, you wouldn't be able to do this or you won't be able to do that? Well, I don't think this vaccination thing's gone away yet. I think that'll come back with the next level of whatever it is. But when they say that you're going to have to, because the ID thing that's coming up, that will have your vaccination status. And I have a firm belief that when we all have to have this thing, and we will have to have it, that if you haven't had all of your vaccinations, then you won't be able to go somewhere. You won't be able to work. You won't be able to go on holiday. You won't be able to, there's all these different things that you won't be able to do because they say so. And it's, for me, I feel like I'm living in a bit of a bad dream. I don't know about you. I could just see things getting worse and worse, and I can't see a fix.
You couldn't have imagined that this would happen in England or the UK 10 years ago, or anywhere in the West. We were the home of freedom. But this freedom has been totally inverted and turned on its head. And now they're bringing in all these kind of things to take away our freedom in a way that you just simply wouldn't imagine. I mean, I know Tony Blair did try to bring in ID cards back in 2006. But even back then, even people in his own party, the Labour Party, all said, no, we're not going to have it. And most of the Tories said no, but that was, over 15 years ago. Now we've got a whole new crop of MPs who are just completely for tyranny, essentially. They will vote to implement all kinds of things to control the people, as we saw during the lockdown. But, there is a positive thing, talking about peaceful civil disobedience, because now this generation has got used to that. One of the lockdowns were terrible, but we had the freedom rallies, starting very early on. I was at the very, very first one in May.
I think I've seen you there.
Yeah. And there's only 50 people there. And I turned up on my bike, and, the policeman came over and he said, oh, are you part of this? And so go away, otherwise we're going to arrest you. So, okay, I just walked away. And
it wasn't that one I saw yet. It was the big one with Kate Shepherd-Marnie and the others.
Those were a few months on. August and September 2020, the massive ones in Trafalgar Square, and they were amazing, because so many people, 20,000 plus people came out, from just 50, then 300, then a few thousand, then tens of thousands, saying, no, we're not going to do this. We are going to stand as free people, and we are going to assemble, and we're going to speak as we always have been able to do. And now it's coming out, with all of these leaks going on, and also with Partygate before, that the people in power, they weren't worried about it. They knew that there was nothing to be concerned about, but they were still smearing everybody and sending the police in heavy-handedly to bat on people over the head and arrest them and fine them for just exercising our freedom. So we live in a tyranny at the moment. Tory, Labour, all together, they're tyrannical. So it is right to be civilly disobedient at this point in time.
But this is something else about that demonstration I went to. I looked around, and there were people from all walks of life, all different political leanings, and I thought, this is something good. This can only be good. And that was something else I was going to try and lead you on to. At the moment, the system itself, the media, TV, call it what you like, is trying to divide between everybody. They're trying to make there be a divide between black and white and the Asians and everybody else. They're literally trying to get everybody to turn on each other, because my belief is this, that if that happens, we'll be too busy arguing with ourselves, and they'll be just doing what they're doing until it's too late, and then we're knackered. I've this critical race theory. I know what your opinion is on that. That it's a load of shite. So basically, and you personally can see it from both sides, because you've got a parent from a mother that's white, a dad that's black, and you can literally see both sides of the coin, which is useful as well. But I mean, this thing 10 years ago, this wasn't a thing. I mean, my best mate growing up, right, I lived in a fairly posh area, and he was as black as you get, right? I didn't even think about it. We just went out riding bikes, climbing trees, and just cracked on, because we weren't bothered by the bullshit that's being pushed on us now. And I have to say, there's so many people who they're not the sharpest tools in the shed by no fault of their own. They're people that just want to get through their day, but they end up following this junk because it's from all angles. It's coming from everywhere. It's either the stereo, the TV, or whatever else. And they end up, if you tell a lie often enough, people will believe it. And I do believe there's people on the right that are believing one thing. There's people on the left that are believing another thing. And there's all the different colors that are all starting to get, was it polarized? Is that the right word for it?
Yeah, I think so.
And it pisses me off, to be honest, because it never needed to be like this, and it shouldn't be like this. I mean, immigration is one thing. What we've got at the moment coming over the channel, and if you look to, say, Ireland itself, not Northern Ireland, but Ireland, and the trouble they've got at the moment, that is an indication of what is coming, because they're well ahead of us, and they're because they're still within the European Union, although sometimes I feel like we are a little bit, they're having this thrust upon them. And their leaders over there are, when they come out on the street now, they're saying, oh, no, you've got to let everybody, Ireland's for everybody. And they're like, actually, no. All right. And the Gardaí are now having troubles. The politicians have been chased away, and it's all going wrong over there. But if we don't get a grip on the situation over here, we'll only follow suit, I think. And that's the last thing that anybody wants. But I can't help but think that this has all been done for a reason. And Wow.
Well, it's the oldest trick in the book, isn't it? I mean, to rule over a people, divide and conquer. You know,
Yeah.
get lots of different people together who are fighting each other, and then the people who are ruling and the elites can just like let them happily get on and like, you know, sort out their squabbles with each other while they go ahead and pillage our resources and take over everything that we've got, which is kind of what's been happening at an accelerated rate over the last 3 years. But you know, it's nothing wrong with having, you know, deeply held political beliefs and opinions. That's okay, but we should all be able to express our opinions without bashing each other over the head or saying you should be arrested for that opinion, you're not allowed to have that opinion, we're going to drag you through the courts because we don't agree with this. But and this is kind of what's happening. But you know, particularly with the race thing, you know, like I first time, you know, I'm from Sussex, but I moved to London the first time in 1993. I'd always been there many times on day trips, but it was the first time I lived there. And it was lovely. That was like 30 years ago. Nobody cared about the color of your skin. It was like, you know, that was Raoul, and there was Irina, and there was Tariq, and whatever, and there was Paul. Lots of different people, lots of different colors of skin, but we just accepted each other and got on as people, you know, and we all just had a good time together. But this is now kind of been blown up, and the, you know, politicians, you know, Sadiq Khan is very, I think, is
divisive.
His rhetoric for this being quite divisive in his rhetoric, exactly, in actually stirring up tensions between races. And the worst thing is the anti-white racism that we have in our country, and that is what critical race theory does. It's a cultural Marxist ideology that says white people are the oppressors, everybody else is oppressed, so we need to pull the white people down from where they are to have equality. Which is absolute nonsense, because, well, let's just see people as people and treat them equally as individuals, and then employ the best person for the job. That's the way.
Yeah, the opportunity of outcome job here, as opposed to I believe in that personally, because they've done tests, haven't they? And they did this through, I think it was feminism actually, but it works in any which way. They said, oh, it's because they got their name and their details on their resume that they're not getting the job. So they took it off, and even less got the job.
Yes.
I truly believe that, you know, best person for the job, and that's how it works. I mean, it's like everybody gets a medal. No, they don't. That what you do is you bring weak people doing that. But I mean, they say that, was it some kiddie the other day? Oh, you've got a atone for slavery. Here we go. Was I ever a slave trader? No. Well, did you realize that we paid back the freedom of the slaves, and we took about 40% of our GDP for that year, and we've only just paid off the loan? So everybody who's over at least 20 years old has paid into that in some way or another through tax, I suppose, paying back the loan or whatever. But I mean, it's just blocks.
But nobody says, oh, the Arabs should make reparations for the
because who sold us them, and who started first
for the Ottoman Empire, and they did as much slavery as the Western nations ever did, and nobody's ever saying that they should make reparations.
And there's slavery now out there. I mean, you know, it's still going on. It's funny because some of the places that we inhabited, that we gave back, have got worse. And that's just the way it is. Right? I don't make this up. I mean, facts are facts, but they upset people as they do. But yeah, I mean, people need to get over themselves, because anybody, if they want to do well, can do well if they apply themselves. I believe that, right? Because you could look at some people that have come from nothing and ended up with lots, and some people that were born into a lot that failed miserably. So, you know, I could have done a lot more in my life if the earlier part of my life I didn't invest in pubs and that sort of stuff. I mean, it was a lazy git, and I deserve everything I get. But you know, some part in life, you got to settle down and get on with it. And as a consequence, facing up to everything that I should have done probably 20 years ago, my life has got much better. Well, it did until I started YouTube, and then obviously not so good. Because I mean, sticking to my guns with things like the face mask and stuff lost me a job. And then I got fired from another job, and the actual words were, "Your politics don't align with us." I was like, "Oh, serious? At least you've been honest."
Now. You're getting fired for your opinions, and that's totally wrong, isn't it? You've got the Equality Act, but there is no equality for having the wrong opinion, for being politically incorrect. And
stale, pale male, get out. You know, at the end of the day, and there's so many of these organizations, middle management are so left wing that you don't stand a chance. And everybody gets called far right as traditional, it seems. I mean, I noticed that you were on a list I pointed out to you the other day, which is a sense of achievement, I believe. And I failed. Never mind.
You've got to up your game, Simon.
Oh,
You've
let's
got
try
to get
harder.
the hate going this
Yeah,
year.
yeah. Surely you could spit some more bilge. That's what you need to do.
How much that they're of their own biological sex. Keep that going. You know,
two genders. Oh, here we go.
genders.
I think I'm gonna have to show up to more demonstrations and say, like, I'll walk next to you and I'll say I'm with him. That'll work. I don't know, but it is a joke. But let's just move on to say, for instance, schooling, because having been a teacher, what is your view at the moment of British schools? As it stands?
I haven't actually taught in a school for, I guess, 7 years now. Last time was 2016, just before I went into being a London Assembly member. But honestly, I think if I went into a school now, I don't think I'd last a day, because it'd be some boy there who says they're a girl, and I'd say, "Oh, come on, boys, now get on with your chemistry," and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm a lady," or something. Sorry, they wouldn't have it. Sorry, I shouldn't do that. I've got to be careful, Simon. You're
I don't want to get you in trouble, but
I got to be careful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right there. Yeah, I need a mute button, don't I, just in case we run away with ourselves. But the fact of the matter is, they're weakening men and women.
Yeah,
right? They're weakening. I don't care, all genders, not all genders, all cultures. They're trying to weaken at the moment. I mean, you can see people in school that they need a safe space. They'll cry over anything. You can't say this or that, the other. Do you remember when they couldn't clap because it would trigger, and so they were doing these hands and stuff like that? You're like,
that's such nonsense, isn't it? Really? Yeah.
How things have changed. I mean, we had people in the trenches in the First World War that were up to 14, 15 years old, and now we've got these special soldiers, which literally can't do a day at school without needing some sort of mental health. I mean,
yeah, but
antidepressants.
It's not just a case of, like, protecting people from the wrong opinions, if you like. It's now you have to participate. So everybody is expected to participate in Black Lives Matter Month, or Black History Month, or Pride Month, or Diversity Week, or Gay History Month, or LGBT History Month. There's all these events that have made a huge calendar. I mean, I think there's maybe like just a couple of days in the year where it isn't some kind of diversity day, week, or month, and everyone is expected to participate. So you can't not participate. So it's gone way beyond tolerance. I mean, 20 years ago, it was tolerance. Okay, tolerate people with different opinions. Okay, fair enough. Then it was like, well, you have to affirm it, and therefore no one is allowed to have the other opinion. But now it's participation. So, which is wrong, because nobody should be forced to participate in these cultural Marxist, essentially far left political activities. That's what they're requiring children to do. So I would totally speak out against it. I wouldn't participate myself. So, I don't know, I wouldn't just be allowed to be left alone and teach my chemistry, and talk about all of the white men of the 19th and 20th century who had made discoveries in chemistry. You'd sort of had to, stick a poster of a gay chemist on the wall. Not that I actually know that there are any, but that's kind
of probably some out there. But they'll be wrapped in with a trans flag. That's our hero. Okay, if you say so. But I mean, that leads on to the next thing. This drag queen story time rubbish. There have been some protests I've seen out there. Have you been to any of those, or have you seen any of them?
I haven't. I've seen a lot of them, and I'd like to go to some. I'm just so busy with stuff. I haven't, I haven't been able to get to them. I know there's another one today. There was one last week. There's a lot of them tend to be in London, and now I live in Sussex now, so I haven't been able to make those ones. But it's absolutely appalling what's going on. I just can't believe. I mean, it beggars belief to me why parents would take their kids to this kind of thing. Because it's just absolutely degenerate. You've got people like grown men, and it's an excuse for them to get their bits out in front of kids. I mean, what are the police doing? If
the police are politicized, aren't they?
Yeah, but if this happened on the public highway or the high street, they would be arrested for indecent exposure. So why can they do the same thing in a library or a school and get away with it? They shouldn't. We have laws to deal with this, but laws
they're selectively used, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, that sort of act you'd have expected to see in a fetish or a gay club sort of 20 years ago. That would have been that. Now, the excuse they're using is, well, there's pantomime dames. They were fully dressed, head to foot, with a syrup on, right? And their faces all painted up. And literally, they were from the ankles up. And these were known to be men who, as far as we were concerned, was straight anyway. They were just taking the piss, basically.
Yeah.
And
they were not sexualizing. There was nothing sexualized about their performances, was there? It was unlike these sort of drag queen things that are going on.
There's some bloke out there at the moment, he's getting a lot of airtime, and he's trying to get people or kids away from their parents. No contact with your parents. Speak to me, tell me all your secrets. I know exactly what it is. It's grooming, right?
Yeah.
Now there's so many politicians from the past that have turned out to be wrong. That's the best way I can put it. And I do think that the positions of power are awash with this. We're seeing it in the police. I would say it's in the civil service. It's definitely in politics. And I'm trying to work out why. Now, I know that politics does attract a certain level of, you can get a lot of narcissists go into politics because they want a position of power, don't they? And I think that there's two types. There's the people that have gone in there out of pure frustration, like yourself, right? And there's the other people that all they ever wanted to be was the center of attention, and they wanted to be in a position of power to benefit themselves. And I think we've got a lot in there like that. I mean, you look at the Labour, they always complain about Tories, and I'm neither, by the way. But when you see they used to complain, you well, look at your expenses. You've gone absolutely mental, and you're getting lobbyists pay you huge sums of cash. And this is another thing, lobbyists. When you can buy somebody's favour or opinion, there's something wrong, I think. I mean, just lately, I've got to the point where I actually open my mouth and nothing comes out because I'm so frustrated about this whole situation. So going forward, parties like yours will gain a lot of support, but what they will do is the system will come down on you. Obviously, you're aware of that. They will try and make you out to be far right, extreme, and every other name. They're probably going to call you a white supremacist because that's the latest thing.
I've had that already. It's totally ridiculous, isn't it?
Seriously, it's like, white supremacists? Idiot. You know,
I don't know how they work that one out.
It's some word and brain salad that I can't get my head around. But mind you, what we're dealing with at the moment is pre-trained insanity. When you're telling kids from a young age that everything their eyes and their ears are hearing and seeing isn't true, and it's actually something else, that's got to have a long-lasting effect. And then what you also do is embolden people that generally don't have the best amount of personality, looks, charisma, and whatever it is that would have been in the back of the class or not looked at, that if you paint your hair blue and you say that you're 17 genders and stick a load of metal in your face and say I'm I don't know, Vauxhall Cavalier, that you're going to get a load of attention. And it does make the people who desperately seek attention go to these things. But the fact that, I mean, go for instance, this trying to make kids become trans from an early age, that's a crime. But I see what I mean?
It is. I sometimes have the same frustration because, you know, I say this is balmy, this is insane, this is wicked, but it's beyond that. It's a whole other level beyond just even normal insanity. This is absolutely barking crazy, you know, what's going on at the moment. And it's consistent. People are consistently telling people that what is clearly blatantly not true and untrue is true, you know, blatantly pushing it down everyone's throats all the time that there's, you know, a man is a woman or a woman is a man. That's the easiest example to pick up, and it's coming through on, you know, the television screens, even sort of these, you know, people's TV channels. You know, I won't name any particular channels, but there's one that we know of that said, oh, well, we're on the side of the people and common sense. And they still use that kind of language, you know, as well, which plays right into the sort of transgender agenda. But the wickedness of this is that they want to get children at a younger age as possible indoctrinated in this, and then to reject their natural biological sex and to be confused into being gender queer. And then what happens later on is that they get their bodies mutilated.
And they can't go back. That's the problem. Right. When they've got past this stage of being indoctrinated into a cult, which is, I think, what it is. I was going to say this. I believe in homegrown Christian. I don't believe in the church anymore because that's been totally taken over.
Sadly,
But I believe that there's there's an afterlife. I believe in God. I believe in good and evil, and I believe that what we're trying to do, although whether we do it well enough or not, is generally good, and what they're actually doing is evil. I mean, World Economic Forum, the United Nations, all the globalists, right? Anybody that plays into this and knowing full well that they're doing human beings harm around the globe are evil. And I believe there's a massive force for evil at the moment. And they said there's all these different types or stages of an empire. And at the end of an empire, where it all falls apart, is decadence. And in decadence, we get bred in circuses. We get literally, we hold up people in high regard that usually would just not be, right? And I think that's where we are now. And if you look at stuff like Hollywood, that's completely full of wrong ones, and yet we're told to look to them. And you've only got to look at the music industry with idiots like Sam Smith dressing up as a what hasn't he dressed as lately, except a Christian conservative man, which is not really his thing. But we're told to hold these people in high regard when really they should be going, that person is clearly not well.
And they're absolutely degenerate as well. And it's not a case of them being, they're a little bit mentally ill. Some of them are, but some of them are, they're absolutely wicked. Like you mentioned, Christianity. I'm a Christian, but this is it's very clearly now good and evil. Yeah, it's something that's been going on since as long as humanity has been around, since the fall of man, as the Bible says. But it also says, the times are coming where people will give prizes to those who sin the most, who do the worst things. And that's what's happening now. They get accolades for doing the most disgusting, degenerate things. Which is why
I want to talk to you about heritage. Heritage is important because that's remembering your past. Now, Labour used to be for the working man, and Conservative used to be conservative. Labour have swung so far to one direction now that they're literally make Mao look like a nice guy, but they're literally so far away from where they started that they're not for the working man anyway, because when you're flooding the market full of unskilled labour, you're not thinking about blue collar workers, right? So, and you're not thinking about the working men. Move that aside. Then we've got what were conservatives. How would you even describe? They're not conservative, are they?
I call them fake conservatives, or conservatives in name only. They should be taken to the trades description panel and stripped of their name, because they're not in any way conservative. I mean, there's very little difference between them and Labour and the Greens.
I call it two sides of the same coin at the end of the day. And it's funny because one of them will make a load of things, 5 years worth of mistakes that cost us dearly. Then the next one gets in and blames it all on them for the next 5 years of that they do. And then it's a perpetuating, and we don't see, or most people haven't woken up to, have you ever noticed that things don't change and it's just a two-party system? We've got a fake version of democracy, and we changed it. I mean, it's first past the post thing you were talking about in an interview, but the voting system, had it have been changed, I do believe that going back a long time ago, that UKIP would probably would have got power, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, if we had proportional representation like they have in a lot of other countries, I mean, in 2015, UKIP would have got about 90 seats rather than just one, and would have made a massive difference in Parliament. And, then maybe would have gone on to become the party of government. Who knows? But it didn't. And sadly, it sort of all fell apart. And that's where it is now. But yeah, I do think we need to bring in proportional representation, both at national and at local level. And, that allowed me to get elected on the London Assembly, because they have proportional representation. They have it in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. I mean, it doesn't work so well. Unfortunately, all the parties you've got are basically still the same, though. So we need something that's different to, as I say, Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, because that's no choice.
So you are conservative in everything you do, right? You are traditional in values. You want to remember our history, carry on our traditions. You want our schools to be teaching the original history of this and traditional values and wholesome ways, and not be pushing all this rubbish, and you just want the 2 words here: common sense.
Yeah.
That's like a blasphemy nowadays. I mean, if you say, well, that doesn't make any common sense. Like this, they hate you for it, because common sense has almost been bred out of people, and it's a quality. I thought everybody had common sense, But then you look at the TV, you went, what are you doing? And then you go out and people can't work out the most basic things because they've been told to rely on this thing to tell them to do everything. And it's just like, think for yourselves. But they can't do that, which is a pain in the ass. Now, shall we take some calls? Dare I say? Right, okay.
Let's see what
I'll put the we're all happy now. We'll see what happens. Right, we are going to do the call in for anybody who would like to speak to David. And if you're nasty and mean, you won't last very long. So, right, hang on.
I'm sure everyone's very nice who calls in your show.
Well, it depends on what time you do it. I mean, I generally don't get any nasty people, but it is if you go at night time, you generally have people that have been adjusted, but some by alcohol. That's why I thought we'd do it now before the pubs have been well and truly taken advantage of. Here we go. One call. Hello, how you doing?
Hello, Simon. Hello, David. I've been looking forward to speaking to you for a very long time.
Great.
That's David, obviously. Right. What have you got to ask David then?
Oh, I've got lots of things.
Okay, but what we'll have to do is we'll have to keep it fairly brief because I'm going to want to get through a lot of people. All right, but crack on anyway.
Okay. Have you, David, and Paz in the comments, ever heard of the term biological Leninism?
I haven't heard of that term.
It relates to a series of articles that were written in 2017, 2018 by someone called Spandrel. And what it essentially is biological Leninism is cultural Marxism on steroids. It's Marxism applied to biology. And that's how they're using it to discriminate against straight people, discriminate against white people, discriminate against Jews. It's a mutation of cultural Marxism, and we really need to get awareness of biological Leninism out there in the mainstream, like we did with cultural Marxism beforehand.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds very much like cultural Marxism. It's just a different iteration of it with the whole sort of transgenderism agenda coming through, because then transgender people are seen as oppressed, and anyone who doesn't agree with them is the oppressor. And so that means that they need to completely change society and all of the laws in it in order to accommodate the wishes of a very small number of people who consider they're oppressed when they're not really. So, yeah, I think that's something that I already talk about, but more under the auspices of cultural Marxism as well.
Yes. I also went on your website earlier this week because I understand that you've got candidates in Wales, but I haven't been able to find anyone in my area. And I would like to meet other like-minded Heritage Party supporters in my area. So I'm rooting for you. You're the only true Conservative party out there.
Thank you. Well, do write into the office at heritageparty.org, and I can put you in touch with our Wales coordinator. We do have a branch going in Wales now. They're having a meeting on the 30th of March, sort of an annual meeting. So if you write in, I can put you in touch with the Wales coordinator, and you can get in touch.
Oh, thank you. Right, thank you ever so much. And thank you, Simon.
No problem at all. Right. Well, what I'll do is I'll get on to the next call, if there is one, and I'll speak to you in a bit. There you go. So, well, that went well. And while we're waiting for the next one to come in, what you usually do is you just get started on a conversation and the phone goes. So legacy media, what do you think about the legacy media?
It's appalling. I mean, they don't have me on hardly at all. I mean, you know, these mainstream channels, and they just ignore us now. But they're absolutely dreadful because they're just pushing all the agendas, the globalist agendas.
That'll be a call for you, by the way.
Okay, let's take the call.
Hello, Jordan. How are you, mate?
All right, how are you doing?
No worries, mate. So you got a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to see David's take on my little situation that's still ongoing.
Briefly as you can, mate.
Basically, about 2 years ago, I was exempt from the whole mask situation, and I've been going on an ongoing tribunal with them.
Right, you were basically fired out your job for the non-mask, wasn't it, or the non-vax?
Not been fired, but it's been basically I wasn't allowed in for a fair while, and once they did allow me in, the damage was basically done.
But this was over the lockdown. What was it that they wanted you to do that you said you didn't want to do?
Wear the mask.
Right, so it was the mask thing, same as me getting binned off.
Yeah,
So,
had a legal, actually, on the full COVID line, I had a legal right as well within the line.
so you want to know what his take is on you being bullied about being thrown out for not wearing a mask, which was it even legal at the time?
It wasn't even a legal requirement when it comes down to, like what they say, they enforced it, but like I say, there was all the legal mumble jumble, which technically did allow me to not wear a mask, but they ignored that anyway.
Right, but basically you didn't want to wear one because you didn't believe in it, and there was no real particular law. But as a consequence, they told you not to come into work, and you're not there anymore. Is that about the sum of it?
Well, I should be going back, but you know.
So you're still off at the moment over it. It's still going ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be allowed to go back to work. So, I mean, obviously, I can't give legal advice, so this isn't legal advice, but it sounds to me like your employer isn't doing the right thing. And, you know, hopefully you've got a union. I mean, during the time, I don't say this very much, but I did actually work for Workers of England Union and represent a few people who were care home workers who were being put out of their jobs under the no jab, no job policy. But it was, they should have been allowed to stay in if they had a medical exemption. And so we had these people who could prove they had medical exemptions, but sometimes the employers were still trying to fire them. But we got some of them to stay in their jobs. And it was one of the best things I've done, you know, to help people keep their jobs in the face of this tyrannical, you know, regulations coming in. But your sounds much more a clear-cut case. You know, hopefully you've got a good union like the Workers of England who represent you, and you know, take things to grievance hearings and potentially a tribunal as well if that's necessary.
Oh, I'm in a tribunal with them already. Just
how far forward with this tribunal are you?
Supposed to be going ahead in September.
And what do they reckon the outcome of that's going to be?
I say they think it's pretty clear cut, but like I say, they keep fighting it because they believe that they did things right, and basically are justifying the death of one person in the company as their example.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound to me like, you know, if there's one person who died in the company, you know, that's tragic. But sometimes people do die when they're in work. And, you know, it's nothing to do with you wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. I mean, now it's very clear. Masks didn't have any effect whatsoever in stopping the transmission of this virus or, you know, in stopping the infections of the virus from going round. So now we got, you know, they were obfuscating that at the time, but now everybody's very clear about that. If you go to the tribunal, I mean, it seems to me that the judge should make the decision that actually that there's absolutely no need for you to wear a mask and you should be reinstated into your job. That seems to me, now again, I say this is not legal advice, but that seems to me what should happen when you go to the tribunal.
All right there. So, Jordan, I'm going to get on to the next one, mate. But what you'll do is once you've done it, come back on, because I've got a feeling we're going to have Dave on again here, David Kurten, because we're having a laugh. All right, buddy?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, mate. You take it steady, all right? See you later.
Yeah, take it. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I remember when he first got binned off, and it was like he's got kids and everything. It was a nightmare for him. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm going to stand by my guns. Here's another call. Yeah.
Hello, Simon.
How you doing?
Hiya. Can I speak to David, please?
Yeah, that's the point.
Here. Hello.
Hi, David. Listen, I just want you to be our Prime Minister. Can you not do that for us?
Thank you. I'm doing my best, but I need an army of people to help me get in. What I need is, obviously, there's going to be a general election next year in 2024. We're building the Heritage Party. We're getting lots of candidates already, but I need 650 candidates to stand with me in all the constituencies, and then we got a chance of getting in. So, you know, hopefully that can happen.
Well, how do I go about supporting you? I mean, like everyone else, we've all got busy lives, but I'm prepared to go around dropping leaflets indoors for you.
Fantastic.
All right, and I live in Suffolk, Ipswich.
Oh, great. Well, we got some people standing in Ipswich, so write into me in the
Great.
office, and I'll put you in touch with Terry up there, and
Okay.
we can get you in touch with people and standing in Suffolk. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, listen, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. All I'm going to say to you is the majority of the British public support you, and the political parties, Labour and Tory, need to look out. They need to be very aware, right? Because I'm the same. I think I'm the same age as you. I'm 51.
Yeah, that's my age. Yes.
Yeah, I thought we're the same age. But but you talk my language. You talk, you know what you do, mate. I don't have to tell you. I don't have to kiss your backside. At the end of the day, mate, Simon, he's running this channel, right? It's all good, right? The public have had enough of both these stupid parties, mate. They really have, mate.
Me too. Yeah.
They really have, mate. They've had enough. I've had enough. And the public have had enough, and it's time. Look what's happening in Ireland. Oh no, they called us far right and all this bananas, but we're not far right. You know what I mean? We're not far right. It's to do with our culture.
It's ridiculous.
I think the expression "not far right," forced right, because I mean, when the Overton window moved, we remained stationary, so we were, that's how it is. But anyway, all right, mate. Well, if you get in contact with his office, you might be able to give a hand when the time comes, buddy. All right.
I will do. And Simon and David, thanks for your time. It's a really good radio show tonight. I'm really enjoying it.
No problem, mate. Cheers there, buddy. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Bye, guys. Bye.
Now, there's a guy you've got to get in contact with, right? And if he's watching this, I'm stitching him up. Ex-Army Paz. You may have seen him. He does exactly the same as me, but he's slightly politer.
Okay.
And I made a deal with him. I said, if nothing changes, we'll have to get into politics. So you should speak to him. He's very good. And he's he's over here, but he's from Wales. 1 second. Here's another caller. Hello.
Hello, donkey.
Oh, God. Who have we got now?
It's Steve here.
How you doing, mate? You want to speak to Dave?
Yeah, do briefly. Just want to ask David, what does he feel that it seems like a hell of a lot of our politicians are actually fifth columnists?
Yeah, I totally agree, because a lot of them are allegiant to the World Economic Forum and globalist organizations rather than the people. Klaus Schwab boasts he's penetrated the cabinets of governments around the world. So those people who have been penetrated into our country, so it's not painful kind of language, but those people who are allegiant to him and other organizations are not working for the people and not working for the nation. They're working for the globalists in order to destroy our nation and to destroy our society and families and private property and small businesses and so on. And you can see that quite clearly. So there are fifth columnists. I totally agree with you. And we need to sweep them away.
Yeah, I just feel that, I don't know. I'm a little bit older than you, 55. I've got 2 kids, teenagers. And I just really worry what is happening. I just see what's coming down the line, and it's not good. It's not good, and we have got to fight back. I'm
scared of yourself. I don't know about you. I'm bloody panicked. Well, where they say the future's bright, the future's orange. It's far from it. It's looking black, and unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of, I hate to say it, misery, hardship. And we're going to have to go through a hell of a lot, and people are going to have to stand up. Otherwise, we are knackered. So this is probably the most serious time in my life I've ever lived. I mean, obviously, if I go back in history and I think about what was the most threatening thing to me, or what has been the most threatening thing to me, apart from my own self, like driving, this is it. I mean, my future, I don't know how it looks, and yours the same, and everybody else is here. I've got a daughter, and I want grandkids, and what they're going to be brought into. So we really all do have to band together and get on with this.
We do. I served back in the 80s in the military. We had IRA, we had all that. Never felt anything like this. Never felt, I had friends who were killed with the Troubles and that. But what's coming down is just onerous. I've likened it that they want to get rid of all
farm animals, cows, because of the methane and this and that. Actually, they're not. They're just replacing the cattle with us.
We
And
are
we're
the,
there to be-
we are the cow.
we're just there to be milked of money.
But here's the other thing. I mean, they've changed the seed for chickens, and chickens stopped laying eggs. This was a big thing over in America, but I know it happened because I've got friends who have chickens, and they have to change their suppliers, and immediately chickens start laying. But they build these dramas to put panic into us. I mean, well, I have to. I could carry on, but this is actually Dave's calling. So, have you got any more questions before I get on to the next one? Because otherwise, I was going to go off on a waffle there. So.
No.
All
Thank you very much for your time, David, and you, Simon.
No worries,
I'll
mate.
fling some abuse at you sometime again in the future.
Excellent, formidable, wonderful job. Thank you very much. See you in a bit, buddy. All right.
Cheers. Have a good day.
All right, mate.
Cheers.
I love the abuse. But yeah, I mean, what's coming is bad, and the food. I mean, this thing eat bugs. What do you think I am? It's just I'm not eating bloody bugs.
It's disgusting, isn't it? I just can't stand these pictures of these things going around.
Idiots. Right, here's the fridge and microwave guy. Hello, Mr. Fridge and Microwave. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. I'll just turn it down a bit. Hang on.
Disgusting, isn't it? I just can't stand these pictures.
This gentleman calls in weekly, you see, so I know where I am with him.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know, I could
I'm
go
all
use
right,
the
mate,
toilet
yeah,
now
all
and leave
right.
you with it, couldn't I, really? Anyway, what have you got for David?
David is same as the other man was. I'm ex-forces. Simon knows what I'm like. But when it comes to it, think, why is it they spending all the money on these asylum seekers and they can't spend money on our dentistry, doctors, and all that? I went to get an appointment down in Leatherhead in Surrey, and I can't get one. There's not a dentist in Leatherhead in the town or in Dorking.
Well, you know, what the government would say is that all these people coming over are the dentists and the doctors of the future. But that's a load of rubbish, isn't it? But sorry, that's not my opinion. Sorry, I'm just having a bit of a dig at them. But no, it's
another thing Dave might be able to, or you might be able to tell me. I went to certain Simon knows I've been for certain security companies. I don't know why I didn't get the job, but is there any other way that you can find out about the companies that I'm talking about are like OCS, and you go there, very polite, don't get nothing back.
What you
don't
mean?
even get no.
Are you trying to say that you're not the kind of person they're looking for because you're not of a certain thinking, ideology, or whatever?
I don't know what it is. I haven't got a clue.
Because I do know that the security they use at the moment for these migrant hotels is of a certain ilk, and they're brought in, and yeah.
Yeah, no, it is terrible. I mean, we know how much money they're spending on migrant hotels, and you know they must spend hundreds of thousands every day sending the boats out to pick them up in the channel and bring them back. Whereas what they should be doing is pushing them back to France. It's very clear that needs to happen now.
I mean,
goods.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Dave. But where I live, and Simon knows I live down there, you got Gatwick and all that, and there's people like Menzies that can't get air, they can't get ramp agents, they can't get people to do the luggage, they can't even get people to do the boat. I mean, even the company where I used to work, they can't even get road sweepers or loaders because they just don't want to do it. You know,
they need to pay, you know, a competitive wage. I think I hear this a lot. Is that companies, we can't find any British people to work for us, but then they offer quite low wages. I mean, you do have to be competitive with your wages. If they pay £20 an hour,
of course you do.
They might get people to go and apply for the jobs.
The common sense is this: when you flood the market, the people who are the most desperate will work for the lowest wage, and that's the whole purpose of them doing it.
Yeah, well, I went to I did a course. I told someone I did a course and I passed the home national health carers course. You know, basic, got all the eight modules. I come back and my advisor said to me, "Whatever you do, don't go and work for zero contract hours."
Well, this is I mean, I've had 0 hours contracts for the last 20 years because of agency, but that's the way it is. You flood the market with unskilled labor from the third. Well, I wouldn't call it third world, but there are people from the third world. But Ukraine, Romania, and all the other places like that, that 250 euros is an average wage for the month. They're going to work for nothing, and it's still going to be big money to them. And British people know
quite.
what their worth is, and people go, "Oh, they're just lazy." They're not lazy. I mean, that's part of the reason these farmers were doing well, and they started screaming about Brexit because they were literally making good coin out of other people's hardship. And the thing is, the left are very good at saying, "Oh, we need to bring in these immigrants and all the rest of it." Well, what about the ones you did during lockdown? You brought in for fruit picking. Half of them got knocked for their wages, and the rest of them got put up in bloody like metal containers and shite like that, or 20 of them in a house. You know, that's like that woman that says, "Well, who's going to serve me my Pret?" You unbelievable idiot. You know, if you're going to bring people in there, they've got to be paid decent wages. But that kind of ruins the whole point of bringing them in, because globalism likes to make more money.
Yeah. And there was another thing where that lady was walking down the footpath, and the cyclist coming up the other way, and she got 3 years for because she fell off her bike. I mean,
hey,
I saw that.
It's and the boy riding down the road, on a 5-year-old boy riding down the road, and his dad was going, "What's going on?"
I didn't see that. I don't know anything about
No,
that.
I saw that, and you know, it's a tragic situation because I mean, someone died, but then this woman's in prison, and you know, I don't think she should be put in prison for that. Someone was like coming at you down the road on a bicycle. You know, what do you do? It's like, you know, you either have to jump out of the way yourself, and you know, it's just you know, it's a very tragic situation, but. You know, the only thing is you get people who've done far, far worse things, you know. You get let off with a slap on the wrists, and they've, like, you know, violated a woman or something, and they get far less.
In Surrey, and I've just had my poll tax, and you'll laugh at this. My poll tax, and it's a Class A, is £1,400 a year.
Well. Anyway, mate, I'm going to have to get on to the next caller, because otherwise...
Okay, cheers, Si.
All right, buddy, you take it steady. David. See you in a bit, mate. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Good to see you.
He's a good lad. Every week he rings in and he tells me about how it is going down there. Yeah, but... I was going to go off on one, but probably just as best. What do you make about the civil service? Do you think they're... Oh, here we go. There's another caller. We'll get that one out then, will I? Hello.
Hey, Brad. How you doing, mate?
Not too bad, mate.
I've got some questions for
crack on.
Wonderful David.
Yeah. Okay. Hi.
Hi, David. I'm an electrical engineer. What do you know about 5G? I know it's toxic, and I know how to prove it in a simple way. But what do you know?
Well, I mean, what I've said about 5G, and it's in our manifesto, is that it shouldn't be switched on and rolled out until it's been fully safety tested, because they're new frequencies of radiation, new frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. They're not being tested before, and so we need to make sure that before it's used, it needs to be properly and thoroughly tested to make sure it doesn't harm people.
I can explain why it's toxic right now, and in a simple way that people can prove it.
Go on.
Right. It uses high frequency pulses. Right, and what that does is every little pulse creates a little tiny piece of electricity in the air. The byproduct of that pulse is non-ionizing radiation. So what is happening is this. These waves pass through you. A lot of people don't believe that. So a simple way to prove it is waterproof your phone, chuck it in the bath, and it'll ring. We're mainly made of water, and that proves that radio waves pass straight through you. So what happens is that when these radio waves pass through you, they deposit a small amount of non-ionizing radiation within the body. Now, if you go to somewhere that is a high EMF zone, i.e., for example, where people are streaming live video, you will have a phenomenal amount of these pulses passing through your body. What happens then is that your good iodine within your body is displaced and replaced with bad. And the way to prove it is you do a simple iodine patch test on your wrist near your pulse, and you go to high EMF zones. You will see that pulse, that patch on your wrist absorb very, very quickly in those zones. What that means is that your body is getting filled up with bad iodine, and then later on, you will detox it through a dry cough that drags out, a cold that drags out, and possibly rashes. Your body size affects greatly how much this affects you. So it's generally women that will feel it, and men are a bit useless.
So fat gets like me as sound. Is that what you're saying?
And basically, yeah, if you're a chunky monkey, you're going to be all right. So it's the ladies that are getting very, very badly gaslit about this. And I'm chatting to a lot of them right now because I'm giving them the answers they need. Because they go do the iodine patch test, and then they go, bloody hell, you're right. And I was like, yeah, there you go. That's what's making you sick. So there is proof that can be done very, very simply without getting complicated, which is part of the problem because people don't know the topic and they're just saying words.
Is there anything to back this up, though? Just say, because obviously from a bloke who knows nothing, right? Just asking, is there any way you can share some info of that?
Well, what kind of information do you want? My brain's full of it.
No. I meant like already printed out so people can read it for themselves.
What can I just ask?
Hang on, Dave wants to ask you a question.
I just asked a couple of questions about what you said. What do you mean by non-ionizing radiation? Do you mean gamma waves, or do you mean?
Well, I mean, what it is that they claim that the thermal limits that they use for this technology are fine. But these thermal limits that they're basing them on are based basically off the sun, like you're saying, the normal radiation that comes off the sun, which bounces off the skin. And they're saying it's the same. It's not. It's apples and oranges. It's completely different things.
No, I mean, let me put it very simply. By non-ionizing radiation, are you referring to the microwaves which are between 3 and 100 gigahertz in frequency?
No, that's not my point. This is where everyone's getting way excited with all these frequencies.
What precisely are you referring to by non-ionizing radiation?
I'm talking about the byproduct of the pulses that's being deposited in the body.
What is that byproduct?
Non-ionizing radiation. Electricity creates radiation. If you've got electricity in any form...
You're talking about electromagnetic radiation?
Yes.
So you're talking about the microwave frequencies which are emitted by the 5G transmitters. Is that what you're talking about?
No, the pulses. The pulses created.
Well, the electromagnetic radiation will be sent out in pulses, but it's still electromagnetic radiation, isn't it?
What it is how this system works, right? It's beamforming. It goes straight to the device. It's different from any other phone network we've ever had.
But it's microwave radiation with a certain frequency. That's what I don't understand about what you're saying.
Right.
And I haven't got a clue.
Okay, so a frequency is a wave, yes? Right, it's just a wave. Just imagine a wave.
Right. We could go. Listen. We could go on about this for ages.
I think we'll have to take.
And I'm not getting anywhere. So what I'll have to say is, look, put some evidence out there on paper so that we could read it and let him have a look at that. Because otherwise, we could be arguing the toss here, and we're supposed to be talking politics. So
Right.
I'll say thanks for coming on, mate. You all right?
A bit of. I was interested because there's a bit of science. I'm sorry.
I see you lit up, and I was like,
geek for a moment there.
Well, I don't think he understood it firmly. So I was
trying to understand. But
yeah, I was thinking, you're talking to a bloke who that's his topic. He's done 20 years of it. I think we're not going to get anywhere here. Hello.
Hello, buddy. Who's that?
This is the bloke who knows nothing about 5G. How are you, mate?
Oh, I know. I'm going to talk to the two lads. Sorry, buddy, lad.
Yeah, you are, mate. You're talking to us. Anyway, you got a question for David?
Where I turn this down, so I can hear you better, Bonnie, lad. I'm sitting in the back kitchen watching on my YouTube.
No worries, mate.
I just wanted to phone. I want to ask Davey about what he feels about Independence Alliance that's taken power in Durham County Council and County Durham State.
Crack on, mate. You ask the questions, I'll sit here.
All right, cheers, Bonnie, lad. So long. See ya.
No, I meant you ask Dave what you want to say, mate, and I'll just sit here and listen. Oh no!
I think the question was about an independence alliance in County Durham. Was that?
I didn't.
I mean, I'll just briefly answer that. You know, I think I understand a little bit. I mean, if I understand rightly, County Durham doesn't have local elections this year. I think their elections are in 2024. So you know, with local counties and local elections, you know, we are working with some independent groups already, you know, to not stand in the same places as them. But that's been done on a local level with local groups. So, you know, I'm very happy if the Independence Alliance of County Durham want to write to me and work together. You know, just write in and we can talk about that.
Just anybody else but legacy politics getting in there. Not anybody else, more or less. Yeah, unless it's a bunch of nutters. I mean, I'd rather. Do you remember? Was it Screaming Lord Such at Nutter? I sooner he was in politics at the moment. There it is.
You made more sense than the legacy parties, wouldn't they?
And it just, well, we had somebody ringing in, but I silenced that off just so I could get you to finish your point. There's somebody ringing in a bit. So what was I talking about? Yeah. Well, we were going to go down the civil service road. And do you think that they've been compromised?
They've been infested by common purpose, this organization. That's what they do. Everyone who goes into it has to do their training courses.
And common purpose is nothing else but teaching you the way to, well, it's circumventing the chain. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm not a man. Hello, how you doing?
All right. Are you on the same man again?
Yeah. Because I think David answered your question, but I was going to get you to answer David, but you thought that I was saying something else.
Yeah.
So go on and you ask him what you like now, mate. All right.
Yeah. If I stay on the phone, will I be able to talk to them?
Yeah. Crack on.
Oh, spot on, brilliant. Cheers, bunny lad. Thanks for that one. Hey, good lad.
Right. So David's answer to you was yes. He would get in and talk to this party you were thinking about, buddy. But carry on.
Yeah, I will watch it. Yeah, I watched that bit. Yeah, I got that bit of a mind. But I just want to know how we would like stand where would he stand with us, or where do we stand then? Same with the Reform Party, say. You know what I mean? So just to get rid of the Judas Party.
Well, I mean, are you a local independent party in County Durham? Is that right?
Aye, that's right. Yeah, independent.
Yeah. So I mean, we're not you know, national parties. Reform are completely different. They don't want to work with anybody. They, you know, you might have seen the Piers Morgan show where I was on with that, and Richard Tice and him did a sort of ambush where they tried to, you know, put the opposite opinion on the Ukraine situation. So, you know, Reform are very different to us. So that's not on the cards. But, you know, for local elections where there's thousands of council seats and we haven't got enough candidates to cover thousands of seats, we are already working in some areas with local independent parties, you know, to not stand against them if we have the, you know, similar policies and similar views on things.
Yeah, that's it, Jerry. What it is, people obviously, the Tories are never going to get in the northeast, are they? You know what I mean? Because it goes too deep with us. But what I'm saying is, even in Labour, there was a red wall here. Obviously, we Coleman, I'm a PBL, a Pick Village lad. We all Pick Village lads. And we just, I mean, I was a Labour Party member for 4 years, and you and your man for 30 years. But even I will tell you that people had enough for the Judas parties, and we want to stand on our own. And we could be quite willing to join with us. We'll stand side by side anytime, mate. You know what I mean? I want rid of the Judas parties. So I've spoken to a couple of the lads from the Reform and that, and they're up for it as well. So if you ever this way, Davey lad, just pop yourself. I live in Chilton County, Durham. Just pop in there, mate. We'll have a crack anytime you want. All right, good man.
Right. That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. So basically, if you can link up at some point, if when it comes to the time, and basically make sure that nobody stands on anybody else's feet, you get a better result. That's what we come up with, yeah.
Well, the situation was we had 12 seats on our council, yeah, so all held by obviously Labour because we were Pick Village,
yeah.
And after the last 6 general elections, local elections, it went 8-4 to the Independents, and that went across the northeast. You know, so the northeast is run by it's called the Independent Alliance. We all got together and obviously formed the alliance.
Right.
So what I'm saying, though, Jerry, if we ever up this way, I will look into us, and I'm telling you now, mate, we'll be sure that the shoulder was here. As long as you're against Labour and the Tories, you're our man. All right?
Yeah, well, certainly am. Yeah, certainly am against them. Great. Oh, well, right. I'll look forward to coming up and having a drink with you all. Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, cheers for ringing in, Macy. I'll speak to you again soon, all right?
All right, Bonnie lad.
See you in a bit. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
I like him. Right. we were talking about common purpose. Now, some people won't understand what the common purpose is all about, but it's basically a seedy little environment where they get what they want, and not through democratic means, I don't think. I've turned off the calls for a minute so that because you can explain more about common purpose, you understand more about it than I do. What's your take on it?
Yeah, they do training courses, and they try to select people who they think would go well and push their agenda on a local level, on a government level, and get into civil service and actually implement the policies that the globalists have, and circumvent again. You might get elected politicians into a council or something who have an agenda, but then you've got all the civil service, and they're the ones who actually do the job. You say what happens, you know, like the MPs, they say this is what we want to happen, but then you've got the thousands and thousands of civil service people who actually do what they say. But then if they're sort of trained by common purpose, they're trained to actually obfuscate what the elected politicians want to do and oppose them. And they have their slogan is leading beyond authority or something like that. So you have the elected leaders, they think that they're going to lead it in whatever way they want, regardless of whoever's democratically elected. So again, it's anti-democratic, people infiltrating the councils and the government and the departments, and then implementing what they want to do.
The example of that lately was the boat thing. You had politicians saying one thing and the civil service saying, well, we're not going to do it. And there's your best example of it. But
yeah, which is it's treacherous. I mean, I wouldn't say it's treasonous, but you know, it could be.
It's not far.
They're supposed to do what the government says because they're supposed to be politically neutral. Whoever the people vote in, you do what they say. You know, you do what the people say. You don't do what you want. You know. When you're in the civil service, you know, that's how it should be. So, yeah, so this is a system, you know, that a lot of them are compromised by this.
I've got to ask you how you're doing for time, because I know you're a busy guy. Have you got much on?
Yeah, look, you know, what is it? Oh, I've been on over an hour now, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, we could do. I don't want to take too much of your time, and we can do. We can do this. Yeah, you can do it as long as you like. But what I will say is, we can do another one as well.
Yeah,
at any point you want, because it's up to you. But
right,
what are we going to do? We've done with the policing service. We've sort of covered that anyway, because I do believe that nowadays there's a lot of. I mean, they want the police to eventually do a degree to be a copper.
It's nonsense, isn't it? What do you need a degree for? You know what?
Well, because you have 5 years
through studies or something.
5 years through the meat grinder to turn you into a socialist. Right, I've got a call for you a second here, a minute. So.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. That sounds like Peachy.
It is.
Well done. Hello, lovely.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, I missed the first hour, so I was really pleased to see that David was still on, because he's my hero.
Well,
and you, obviously.
I tell you what, Peachy, because I sort of know you, I'm going to leave you to talk to David for a second while I take a little break. All right, I'll be straight back.
Oh gosh, yeah, no pressure. Thank you.
He's properly taking a break. Oh well, hello, Peachy. How are you doing?
Hi. I have met you a few times before, and usually on protests and things. Yeah, I've left the teaching profession about a year and a half ago. Just so disgusted at what's been going on, and I wondered if you had any tips of, you know, how we can get through, especially to young people, because they don't seem to respond to facts or anything like that, and we seem to be at loggerheads. I was watching, you know, people screaming at each other at the drag queen story time, and I think we need to be quite clever with the psychology. I just wondered if you had, you know, any ideas of how to literally just make people think critically without getting their backs up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things in there. I mean, the sort of protests that you're talking about, you know, the drag queen story time, and also the one I went to in Oxford about a very different issue. It's about the 15-minute cities. A lot of these things.
I was there too.
You get people from, you know, Patriotic Alternative, and then you get people from Antifa, and they're always there. And they always come together, and the police stand between them, and then they scream at each other, and then the media are there and they take shots, and it's like, oh, the far left and the far right, you know, and then it makes a story, but the actual issue gets lost in that, and that's just, you know, some of these things just become a circus. And so that's why I like to go to the protests. That's a lot of the time. I love the freedom rallies, but some of these things, which are a bit smaller, they just turn into kind of, you know, this kind of show. But I think there's a lot of young people who are actually just totally sick of the diversity being rammed down their throats. They say it, you know, a lot of teenagers, they can see it and they hate it. So
can you post a link to that as well? Because there's a person in the comments who wants a link to that, if you can.
A link to what?
Somebody's just saying, can you post a link to it? So whatever you were just talking about, unless that person.
Okay. Well, we were talking about several things really. Just sort of, you know, how some protests work and other things. You just end up screaming at each other, like the drag queen story time. Like I wouldn't dare go to one of those because I wouldn't want to be screamed to by Antifa or something, and I wouldn't want to be associated with. But
that is also the part of paid opposition, isn't it? To do that job, to put nice people off.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it possibly doesn't work like the freedom rallies and the Oxford one, you know, because there's not so much unity, I don't think.
Yeah, and they were much bigger.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
So when the numbers are much bigger, like the freedom rallies, you got 200,000 people, and then someone from Antifa might turn up, and there's only 200, so they get drowned out. There's no
exactly.
They're tiny. When you've got 50 people against 50 people facing off, and then you've got 100 police in the middle, it's a setup. It's just a show. It's a circus, and then that's
absolutely. And it seems like it's an organised mob that come down to the drag queen ones as well, isn't it? It's not sort of genuine sort of concerns, I don't think, you know, on that side. It's
like the people that went to protest, counter-protest down in, Cornwall, right? Because there were people that were worried about the hotel full of the new people. So the locals came out, and apparently all the protesters all had London accents. It's not Cornish, is it? So it was really funny because in go GB News, right? And they're going, oh, we're worried about the far right, we're worried about violence, we're worried about, and they used every buzzword going. I thought, whose side are you on, buddy? You're supposed to be fair and equal, aren't you? Yeah. And the other side, the counter protest, the soap dodgers and the bust in from wherever, they were all quiet. And it's when that bloke walked up and he thought, they thought that he was on board. And that's what he said. Well, if you're going to report this, right, let's have it right. And that went viral. But
yeah, I saw that actually. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, but these people, they get all their signs set out for them. Here's where you get your sign. Here's your rally point. Here's the bus that'll be late on. And around the back of that hotel were all the buses. Because I had a friend who went round there and videoed them. All the buses from the shipped in protesters. They weren't local. So, you know.
Wow.
But this is what we've got. Every time we raise our concerns, you'll have paid soap dodgers pop in, right? Who talk absolute rubbish and have their hair paint all grey or whatever. And then you also get, from the other side, you'll get a few nutters who are protesting, or who say they're on the right. And then the media go, they're the ones. That's what the entire crowd is. And you're like, no. And what they also do is they get the crowd, the soap dodgers, and then they do camera trickery to make them look twice as many as they actually are. Because I had a friend down there who said that they weren't anywhere near as many as they were showing. They doubled it up. And it was like, when we're dealing with a media like this, we've got our hands tied. It's like going into a punch up, right, with your hands tied behind your back and you're just fair target. You know. And we're getting here at the moment, we're having our views reduced, we're having us ghosted. People like you don't get a fair share of the standard media, and it's just so frustrating. If we had an equal and open playing field, the battle had already been won. We just talk common sense.
No question, would there?
I mean, if we had an open playing field, none of this would have we wouldn't have got to this point. In degeneracy or whatever, it would never have got to this.
No, I mean, grown men would have been able to come out if you got rid of all these hate speech laws and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, nobody likes out and out like go do this to yourself, or I'm threatening you and I'm going to do that, or just hatred for the sake of hatred. But if you come out and point out the obvious, that mush is trying to throw his bits in that child's face. That's wrong, right? But if you do that there, you'll get done for all sorts, right? But if we could actually call a spade and just have it out, right? They'd lose. If we could argue on facts, and I'm not talking manufactured, paid for by big pharma facts or paid for by whoever's, because at the end of the day, the green agenda, that's all had scientists that wanted extra funding for something else. Yeah, I'll tell you that the seas receding and all the rest of it, if you pay for my further whatever, there's people out there like that. So this, if we just had honesty, and the other side had to be honest, I know this is fantasy, but if we had it, they would never have got to this. Utterly mad.
It's very slick behavioural psychology, isn't it? That we have to belong to two extreme camps, in order to fight.
And to turn people, honest, normal people, to turn them on honest, normal people is mad. And to get an entire generation of people to think that black is white, white is black, up is down, down is up. And, this is 1984 shite. It's just...
Well, it's exactly, I mean, the whole thing, isn't it?
Have you mentioned that you had to leave a place because of what they were teaching?
Yeah, well, I said, about a year and a half ago. And I have to say, although there are a few teachers like me, we've all left or are leaving, and you're getting these sort of very young, indoctrinated teachers coming in, being incredibly rude to boys, actually, I noticed before I left, all this sort of feminazi type. And,
shut up.
And you're not allowed to question the climate, you're not allowed to question anything. And I think once BLM happened, that was the end. I could see everybody starting to segregate, and it was really horrible.
But this is the good thing about the Muslims, right? I believe there's two types of camps on the Muslims. They've got your Muslims who just want to get on with life, right? They've been here for years, right? Leave me alone, I'll leave you alone kind of stuff. But they're traditional. And they're not going to be told not to be traditional, right? So when you tell them, I'm sorry, that your son's now got to dress up in a dress, no. And the thing is, and this is the sad thing, white men like me are going to have to stand behind anybody of any different origin to get the word out. Because if I do it, I'm wrong. So somebody was saying earlier on, there was a trans person who does not like all of this stuff that's going on in the schools. And the storytelling, and that person says, I've got to come out and say it for you, because if you say it, you'll get nicked. And we're actually going to have to get hold of, and I know this sounds like an oxymoron, conservative members of all of these different groups to come and speak for us. Because if we don't, we'll fail.
That's exactly it. I have quite a close Muslim friend that I said, how do you feel about all this, gender ideology in schools? And he says they absolutely hate it. People around him, they're aspirational Muslim people. They love Britain. They want the country to do well. They want to, they want to educate their children, and they absolutely hate it. But I just think, please come out and support people. Let's all unite against it.
It will happen. In the end, it will happen anyway. But you had the first generation of like people from India and that who came over here, that all they wanted to do is be as British. They'd escape whatever it was over there because they wanted something new, right? And they wanted what was better for their kids. And the same with the Windrush. The Windrush came over here, right? And all they wanted to do is get on. All right, they had to band together because they couldn't get housing and stuff like this. I'm aware of all of that, right? But what they did was they taught their kids, like the king or the queen, or whoever it was at the time, like the flag, like traditions, rah, rah, rah. We keep some of our culture, obviously. But generally speaking, we came here because we wanted to be part of it, right? Fine. And this has siphoned down. But what you've got is you've got a new brand coming in here at the moment that won't get on with them, right? They won't get on with anybody. And this is bad, because this is the thing. Everybody thinks, it's bad for white people. But it isn't just bad for white people. It will be bad for what I would call the moderate, calm-speaking Muslims. It will be bad for the traditional people of color, right? And I mean, if you look within Islam, you've got two types. You've got Sufi, is it, or the other one? And if you look at these hostels, if you look at these hostels at the moment, they're fighting each other. Well, they're not going to. They're going to. This is going to spill out into the streets, and people will think, the Muslims will be all right. Well, actually, they won't, because it's going to affect them, and it's going to affect everybody else. But
and what happens when their generation of children start getting indoctrinated into things, and then they start being separated from their parents?
Well, do you remember that drag queen I was talking about it to David earlier on? That drag queen which wants full separation from these kids and their parents.
Jeffrey Marsh.
Is that what it is? So
he's creepy.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh no, he's not trans. I think he's I think you'll find he's non-binary.
As I said, a Vauxhall Cavalier.
Oh yeah, he's got a Patreon account where he asks children to speak to them if they want to go non-contact with their parents and stuff. That's the guy, isn't it?
Me. The way he does it.
That's so right. With his big set of veneered teeth. Yeah.
God, how do we get to this? I mean,
well, we get to this by being too nice to acquiesce and then just allow people to come in and start destroying society. And we ought not to have anything of it. There's no meeting in the middle anymore, is there? It's just like, no, you've got to learn to say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not using your pronouns.
No one would have even contemplated these things 20 years ago. This is how far we've degenerated. And over the last 10 years, it's accelerated. And then over the last 5 years, it's accelerated again. I mean, you know, we just go back to where we were 20, 30, 40 years ago, we'd be fine, wouldn't we? But that was just common sense was common sense.
But they're trying to ruin the community as well, aren't they? They get rid of the local pubs. That was a place where men came together and talked, right? Community centres. If there's a Christian school, that's got to be closed. Oh, good God. Right? And they're literally trying to erode every fibre of our fabric of the society. And they can't conquer it until they've destroyed the old. I mean, if they hadn't done anything they had, right? Say, for instance, we had go back to the 80s. All right, things worked great in the 80s in a lot of places, but we had our society. If they came along and said, what we're going to do now, by the way, boys and girls, is we're going to teach you boys to be girls, girls to be boys. We're going to take off everything from you. You won't be able to travel. And we're going to put all these other things. And incidentally, you can't say anything. You're right with that. They wake up in A&E for this is how it works, right? But we have been quieting down over a slow and long process. And we've got to the stage where it seems like too much of a job to stand up. It's too much of a massive deal. It's how do I achieve this? And also, people are afraid of being outlawed by their community, but the community around them, a lot of them, are waiting for somebody to speak up. And then another one, and then another one. And then all of a sudden, the ball will roll, and then it'll go the other way. You'll still have these left-wing nutters screaming out their rubbish because it's the only thing that made them important. And they know that, when that falls down, they'll probably be brought to task and prosecuted if they've been doing illegal things. Not just that, they lose their special status and they're gone, over and done with. All I want is sort of somewhere in the middle, somewhere sort of slightly right of centre. Right, that's what I would like. Slightly right of centre. I'm happy with that.
But where we are,
well, I'd be happy with anything. Yeah,
anything.
Because I'm more sort of libertarian, but I just don't care. I just don't want the extremes.
No, we are.
Yeah, well, we're called extreme when we're not. I mean, it's a word that's sort of now become meaningless, isn't it? Because anybody who doesn't agree with the far left line, with the cultural Marxist line, with the transgenderism, and with extreme kink or whatever, is far right. So, but we are succeeding. I think I started speaking about these things about 5 years ago, and I got all kinds of attacks. But now there's more and more people speaking out about it, and people are getting the courage to talk about it more, which is only a good thing. It's only going to go one way, but they're doubling down on it at the moment, because I think they can see more people are getting the courage to say, no, we don't want it. Look what happened in Scotland. Sturgeon tried to push this thing through, made a complete mess of herself, and now she's gone. Hopefully, what will happen is that they'll get some decent people in Scotland. Scotland's a tragedy. I went to university there, but hopefully that will change around. But people are about it now. So
I went up there in the 90s to Aberdeen. It was a totally different place. But you were saying Nicola Sturgeon, Jacinda Ardern got binned off on something similar. Nobody wants
Who'd
to
have thought Scotland would end up like that, though?
Who'd have thought Britain would have?
Yeah.
Well, yes, indeed.
I mean, the Irish at the moment are having their legacy sold, right? The loyalists over there are up in arms because slowly but surely they're being handed bit by bit back over to Europe without any. There's no recourse at the moment. And this Windsor framework, what is that exactly? I mean, big words, but what it stands for is we'll change everything a little bit later when you calm down. Anyway, well, look.
Anyway, yes. Well, thank you for the lovely long chat.
No worries.
And, I shall bid you farewell. And thanks for the chat, David, too. Very much admire what you're doing. Okay, bye.
All right, chat to you soon.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Well, I would say now is probably as good a time for part 1 to wind it up, and then we'll carry on with part 2 at any time you want, mate. So
we've had a good innings there, haven't we?
Yes. Hour and a half. Yeah, hour and a lot. Yeah. Well, we went out on Facebook, 4 YouTube channels, Rumble, Getter, I think, or whatever. So, and Twitter as well. So we've gone out on a few. So it should be good. Anyway, I'll say thanks. You are the first politician that I've interviewed and actually gone for a lavatory break on as well. I mean, that's got to be biblical. I mean, well, I knew she was a teacher. I thought you're in good hands here, so that'll do fine. But yeah, so what we'll do is we'll wrap this up, and then you've got the rest of the evening to do whatever is a busy man like you've got to do. And I will say thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on. It's been really good. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
No problem. I'll see you soon.
Right.